Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? All right, so the Saints go to Pittsburgh and they lose to the Steelers. I am not going to spend a tremendous amount of time on the game itself. Because, quite honestly, y'all, there just isn't a lot to say. The Saints season, for all intents and purposes, ended after they lost 2 games in 5 days. Remember, they played at home against Cincinnati and then played on the road Thursday against the Cardinals. And that was an opportunity on the schedule where you were 2-3, and if you had come through that winning both of those games, now all of a sudden you're 4-3, your head's above water, and you can see a path to finishing above 500, maybe winning a bad division. They lost both of those games and sunk themselves deeper into a hole, but because the division is atrocious, mathematically they still have a shot. They still had a shot. But as we said then, for all intents and purposes, I just didn't believe this team because it's a symptom of a bad team that you can't string together good performances. We saw that in all those years when the Saints went back-to-back 7-9, or back in 2012 when they were 7-9. In order to finish above 500, you've got to be able to string together good performances, to string together wins, and bad teams don't do that. And the Saints are a bad team, and we knew it then. And you're going to have days where you play well and win. They did it against the Raiders. Great day, 24 shutout, 24-0 against the Raiders. And they followed that up with back-to-back terrible performances, one in primetime on Monday Night Football against the Ravens, and then Sunday against the Steelers, where they lost 20-10. Look, I mean, there's not a lot to say about this game. I mean, you had Andrews at center, Kidd at left guard. You basically had Throckmorton was in there. You had you basically had a preseason offensive line out there. And it was just, and it showed. You had as many first downs as penalties. 10 first downs, 10 penalties. They out first downed you 28-10. 28-10. They almost doubled you up on total plays. They ran 79 plays. You ran 45 offensive snaps in the ballgame. Saints were just 3 out of 12 on third down. 3 of 12 on third down. Alvin Kamara was your leading rusher, 8 carries for 26 yards. How in the world, with Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, does a New Orleans Saints team rush for 29 yards? 29 yards. Brutal. Andy Dalton threw 2 interceptions. You had 186 yards of total offense. You ran 15 times for 29 yards. And might I remind you, that Steelers offense is 31st in the NFL in scoring. And they put up 379 yards on you and ran it for 217. The Pittsburgh Steelers ran for 217. Do you remember when the Saints had that absurdly years-long streak without allowing a 100-yard rusher? They allowed one of the worst offenses in the NFL to run for 217 on them yesterday. Hideous. Oh, by the way, that was with Pittsburgh missing 2 field goals and going 2 of 5 in the red zone. And they still beat you 20-10 in a game that was never really competitive. Andy Dalton's not a good player. We've said this before. He was, and I know a lot of people got hyped on him whenever they put up a bunch of yards against the Seahawks. But Andy Dalton's not a good player, y'all. With context now, you can look back at what we said. We've been saying for weeks. You can look back and understand why Cincinnati let him go. Dallas let him go. Chicago let him go. He's not going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL anymore. He's not a good enough player to put a team on his back and go will you to a win, to carry a team. He's not that guy. There was a point in his career where Andy Dalton was a very good player, and they won division titles in Cincinnati and had playoff appearances, and he was a good starting quarterback. He is not that guy and hasn't been for a half decade. So if you were hoping that Andy Dalton could be that guy, listen, we said this weeks ago. I know Andy Dalton is not the Saints' future. We all know that. He's not the future. Jameis Winston could be. I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying anything definitively. I'm saying he could be. but you got to find out. And Dennis Allen has made a poor choice in sticking with Andy Dalton for as long as he has. Maybe the silver lining is it's allowed Jameis Winston a month and a half to heal. So inevitably, when we see him again, which might be this week, at home against the Rams, he'll look more like himself as a healthier player. And I'm not putting everything on Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton had 2 bad interceptions yesterday. He had 3 interceptions against Arizona, including an awful one in the end zone, pick 6. If you're Dennis Allen, and your case early was, we're playing Andy Dalton because he protects the football and the offense is moving, well, he's not protecting the football and the offense isn't moving. So you can't continue to play Andy Dalton any longer. That's why you are where you are at this point. There are 2 interesting storylines for the Saints the rest of the year, and that's it. I don't know what their final record's going to be. They're 3-7. We've done this exercise before. They're at home against the Rams, who are a bad football team, and I think the Saints actually have a chance to play well and beat the Rams because they have their own issues. The Rams are just 3-6 on the season. But they play the Rams, then you go on the West Coast to play the Niners, and then you come back across to the East Coast to play the Bucs. So I think you can beat the Rams. I don't think you're beating the Niners or the Bucs on the road. You have your bye. You'll come off the bye and play the Falcons, which I think is a winnable game. You go on the road to Cleveland. Remember, Deshaun Watson will be back by then. You're at the Eagles, which there's no way in HE double hockey sticks you're winning that game on the road, especially the Eagles knowing that they've got your draft pick and they would love nothing more than to send you deeper into the pits of football hell. And then you're home against the Panthers, who knows what they'll be playing for at that point. And when you get to week 18, I don't know. But I think you can beat the Rams. I think you can beat the Falcons. I think you can beat the Panthers. So at best, I think the Saints end up a 6-win football team. At best, I think they're 6-11. So whatever. I mean, at this point, that's inconsequential what the final record is going to be. They're not going to make the playoffs. We know that much. And we know you don't have a first-round pick, so it's not like you're kind of secretly hoping that they lose, so you end up with a higher draft pick to draft your franchise quarterback. Really, this is about 2 things. Number 1, can Dennis Allen get this team playing better? Because if Dennis Allen can show some improvement over the rest of the year, it maybe lends some credence to saying, okay, give him another year. And I'm not saying I agree with this, by the way, because Gail Benson showed with Stan Van Gundy and the Pelicans. He was a one and done. She is not afraid to pull the plug after 1 year if it's not working. I mean, there's nothing worse than knowing you're on a sinking ship, and instead of just jumping and trying to swim to shore, you continue to grab buckets and try to throw water off the ship. You're going down either way. Like, get to shore, change course, get to safety. Like, if you know definitively this ain't going to work with Dennis Allen long term, then make the change. But if over the next 7 weeks he shows improvement, then you could make the argument, hey, look, there was a transition from coordinator to head coach. You had the injury early to Jameis Winston, which threw things off course a bit. You had a lot of injury. You could make the case. I'm not saying I buy it, but you can make the case to give him another year. But if they continue to plummet, then there's just no case to be made for Dennis Allen whatsoever. So that's one. Can Dennis Allen show improvement for the remainder of the year? And then the other thing is, what do you do at quarterback? Now, Dennis Allen was asked this after the game about if they would consider a quarterback change moving forward.
I'm not going to get into that right now. We just, came off the game. We'll have plenty of time to evaluate where we're at in a lot of areas.
That is a decidedly different answer than he gave after the last loss against the Ravens, where he was adamant they were not considering changing quarterbacks. So he at least conceded a bit there. And he would be foolish to continue playing Andy Dalton because his only potential saving grace is if you play Jameis Winston, Jameis balls out for the next 7 weeks, and you say, you know what? Maybe they got something. I'm not saying I'm predicting that'll happen, but what I know is if you keep playing Andy Dalton, it's your worst case scenario the rest of the way. So, Saints lose. There is whatever glimmering hope you had potentially of a backdoor playoff run is now dead because Tampa's win in Germany means they go to 5-5. Saints fall to 3-7. So the rest of the season, you'd have to be at least 2 games better than the Bucs and hope the tiebreaker falls your way. So the Saints would have to go like 5-2, and the Bucs would have to go 3-4, and you'd have to hope that of your 5 wins, it's against the Bucs, the Falcons, and the Panthers, and you end up with a better division record than Tampa. So that's over. Okay, that dream is dead. They're not going to the playoffs. I think we all knew that after the loss to Arizona. But now it's really, really dead. Now the rest of the season is about, does Dennis Allen keep his job, and what if anything do we find about Jameis Winston's future? That's all the season's about, the remainder of the way. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.